Shabbat Shalom. I hope you're well. We're getting really close to the end of the Torah cycle, and the fall feast will be starting up pretty soon, so this is a really exciting time of year. At least I love the fall feasts for many reasons, one of which being, our Messiah has already fulfilled the spring feast, and the fall feast he'll fulfill in his second coming. So yeah, there's just a certain energy and vibe about this time of year and this season that I really enjoy. And so this Torah portion is called Ki Tavo, and it's in Deuteronomy chapter 26, verse 1 through 29, verse 8. And now there's one thing that that struck me that I hadn't noticed before in reading this Torah portion, and I'm going to read it. It's in 26, verse 3. And it says, this is when they're gathering the first fruits after they've entered the land. So again, they're still hearing from Moses as they're about to enter the land. They haven't entered yet. It says, you shall go to the priest in charge at that time and say to him, I acknowledge this day before Yahweh your Elohim that I have entered the land that Yahweh swore to our fathers to assign to us. So the Israelites actually acknowledge that they've received the promise. So they state it before the priest. And so I find this very interesting that it's not just it happens and they experience it, but they have to actually bear witness to the fact verbally that Yahweh carried through his promise to them. Now in verse 12, chapter 26, we see again the mention of the tithe, which we talked about before, and how it isn't necessarily every year. In fact, it says here in verse 12, when you have set aside in full the 10th part of your yield in the third year, the year of the tithe. And the tithe goes to who? The Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat their fill in your settlements. Then you shall declare before Yahweh your Elohim, I have cleared out the consecrated portion from the house. I have given it to the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, just as you commanded me. So again, they are declaring that they have obeyed. So the first declaration is Yahweh gave them the land. And the second declaration is that they have obeyed. And remember, obeying the commandments that he gives them is a prerequisite for prospering and living long and staying in the land that he gave them. Let's see. Now it's interesting because in verse 15, what this person is asking for, this person, the people of Israel. Look down from your holy abode, from heaven, and bless your people Israel and the soil you have given us. And so the prayer is for the blessing on the people, but also on the land. Israel is a very special place. It's a very special plot of soil. It's Yahweh's land, and it's his gift to his people. And so I find it interesting and also very precious that here in Deuteronomy we're already seeing people praying to Yahweh to bless the land. So maybe we should take that as an example and follow suit. Now verse 18 of chapter 26. So it's interesting because the people of Israel have affirmed, they've verbally affirmed a couple different things. Now it says, and Yahweh has affirmed this day that you are, as he promised you, his treasured people who shall observe all his commandments, and that he will set you in fame and renown and glory, high above all the nations that he has made, and that you shall be, as he promised, a holy people to Yahweh your Elohim. So really what we're seeing here is the terms of the covenant are being met. And so both sides then hold up their end of the bargain. If we are to break the covenant, then Yahweh is under no obligation to keep his end of the covenant, which is we're his treasured people. And we're high above all nations, and we're holy to him. Of course, we know that we did break our side of the bargain, and fortunately Messiah came and rectified the potential negative consequences of that. But I find it very interesting that here you have affirmations of both sides fulfilling the terms of the covenant, and then you have an affirmation that because both sides fulfill the terms of the covenant, I guess the promises then, the benefits of keeping the covenant are then met. Now, one thing that I find really interesting, if we head to chapter 28, what's happening in the rest of this portion is the blessings for keeping the terms of the covenant are outlined, and the curses for not keeping the terms of the covenant are outlined. And in 28 verse 36, there's a very interesting curse, which is, Yahweh will drive you and the king you have set over you to a nation unknown to you or to your fathers. So this is the exile, where you shall serve other gods of wood and stone. So one of the curses is that the children of Israel are forced to live in an area that the land serves other gods. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bowing down and worshiping those gods per se, but because of the way the land operates and the way that nation operates, they, in a sense, serve these other gods because they have no other choice. Think of it today, the United States. It's not a country that observes the Sabbath on a whole. It observes Sunday, although that is starting to change as well. But, years ago, many places were closed on Sunday, so you couldn't go shopping on Sunday, you couldn't whatever. This could be really difficult for people who are trying to observe Yahweh's covenant and keep the Sabbath, because if you're working all week, you might not have time to go to the store. Your weekend's the only time to do it, but of course you can't on Sabbath, and then Sunday is the only day that the stores are open. So this is kind of how I understand this, is that you're just living in a society that doesn't uphold Yahweh's general way of living. Even though you're not necessarily bowing down and worshiping other gods, you're kind of forced to, or think of it this way, tax dollars. Really don't like to think about it, but some of our tax dollars go to fund abortions and other evil things. And of course, I don't believe in that. And many of the other things that my tax dollars go to support, but it happens. And so this is a symptom of exile. And we're still in exile. We haven't been gathered back. But that will happen at the end of days when Messiah returns. Now in chapter 28, verse 64, this idea is repeated. We see it. It says, Yahweh will scatter you among all the peoples, from one end of the earth to the other, and there you shall serve other gods, wood and stone, who neither you nor your ancestors have experienced. So it's just very sad result that it's not even that like they may want to serve Yahweh but just can't in the way that they want to, and that's the punishment for disobeying and for not holding up the terms of the covenant. Now verse 69, we see this idea again of two covenants. Now we talked a couple Torah portions ago about the 10 Commandments being what we're supposed to do all the time, no matter where we are, if we are children of Yahweh and serve Him. The other set of commands and regulations are really specific to making sure that you can stay in the land. It's for living as a people set apart to Him in the land, ensuring that the land prospers, ensuring that the people who live in the land are treated justly and fairly. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to keep those commandments today, because in general they are very good guidelines for upholding justice and righteousness, which is what we should strive for. And I do believe that we get blessing from obeying them, even though we're not, we're still in exile. But there is definitely two different things going on here. And in verse 69, we see a repetition of this idea. It says, these are the terms of the covenant which Yahweh commanded Moses to conclude with the Israelites in the land of Moab, in addition to the covenant which he made with them at Horeb. So there's two covenants mentioned here. And again, it just fits the two different scenarios, which we just talked about. Now in chapter 29, verse 8, just this is actually the last verse of the portion. And I like that it ends with this, because it's kind of just in case you were thinking, well, we're not in the land, so we don't have to keep His covenant, we don't have to keep the laws. I mean, it's a tired argument anyway. You don't have to do anything. It's all a choice, and it's laid out here. You're either going to get blessed or cursed. So, I mean, you choose. He's not forcing us to do anything. But it's really clearly, the two sides are really clearly separated from each other. You can either serve Yahweh in joy and gladness for the abundance that you've received, or you can serve your enemy with no clothing and being hungry and naked. You're going to serve one way or the other. So you may as well serve the one that doesn't feel like prison and the one that brings blessing. And so here, therefore, observe faithfully all the terms of this covenant that you may succeed in all that you undertake. So you see, it's not just for the land. I mean, that's the main point, because the land is key. The land is what he's given us. It's our inheritance. But observing his covenant also ensures that we succeed in everything that we undertake. And I can definitely see that in my life. I'm not trained as a writer. I just decided one day that I wanted to quit science and start writing. And I've been incredibly successful. And I, credit Yahweh with that. And there are plenty of other examples in my life that I can think of. And I know for a fact that I am where I am and I've had the success that I've had only because of him. There's definitely no way I could have done it all on my own. And so those words that are right here in Scripture, they are true. And you can stand on that and bank on that and take comfort in that. So I hope you've enjoyed this Torah portion. And as always, feel free to leave any comments or share with me your own revelations that you've had, either in the comments or, shoot me an email, send me a message. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your revelations. So have a blessed week and Shabbat Shalom.